Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great episode of CPAC Live. We have a very special guest from very, very far away, Andrew Cooper, the president of Liberty Works, who is the man, the muscle, and the brains behind the first ever CPAC Australia. Andrew, it's great to see your face.
Hey, Matt, it's great to see yours. I miss you, buddy. I miss you,
I
mate.
miss you too.
We spent a lot of time traveling all over the world together at one stage, and now we're all shut down. I'm disappointed.
You know what? They told us when we went to Hong Kong together that they were going to do everything possible to stop us. They were not kidding.
Yeah, it's still going, right?
It's still going. So to give us everyone in America, even though we do have viewers from around the globe, everyone in America in particular wants to know what's going on in Australia. You got hit by this virus, and your government has taken that opportunity to do a lot of things to curtail people's liberties.
Yeah, no, we're in shutdown, and the way the Australian system works is we have a prime minister, but it's a federated system, and we have 7 states that are essentially, for matters of security, internal security, they're autonomous. And so the prime minister, which is a conservative prime minister, has put in measures that have significantly shut down the country, similar to, I guess, what's happened in parts of the US. And so our economy has taken a massive hit. There's been some pump priming of the economy with increases in welfare for those that are affected with unemployment. That's going to be an issue for us down the track. But what's interesting is that the state premiers, as we call them, you might call them governors, they're almost in an authoritarian competition to see who can be the most authoritarian and who can keep the virus out of their state. So we've got borders that are shut down between states. For example, in the state that I live in, Queensland, I can leave Queensland, I just can't come back. So because I might carry the virus with me, right?
Now, do they mandate masks?
No, they haven't mandated masks. We've done all the social distancing, but they shut down many businesses such as gymnasiums. I'm not sure whether this has happened in the States or not, but many businesses were shut down, had to work from home. Enforced social distancing. We had some crazy things though. There were people. There was one guy that was sitting on a park bench by himself in a massive park, and the law said that you could go outside to exercise. He wasn't exercised, and he was given a $13,000 fine, about 10,000 US. Yeah. So. We're in lockdown. I mean, the good news is that we've only had about 100 fatalities in a population of 26 million. And in much of the country, the virus is eradicated. But of course, Matt, I'm not an expert in this area. But the question is, well, if you're keeping the virus out, how do you let people in? And so, we're a tourism nation as well, and it's going to be difficult to work out how to, get the tourism back without exposing the country to the virus again. So it's challenging times, right, Matt? I mean, you've got some challenges in your home.
For sure. I mean, they basically shut down the entire economy here, except for these strange ideas that certain businesses could do things safely, but others they didn't deem as being competent enough to do them safely. And of course, I don't know what the term safely really means because it's everything in life is about risk, right, Andrew, as we know. The saddest thing of all is the despair that comes when people are furloughed, fired, and businesses will shut down forever and never open up again. I talked to one over the weekend, a business owner I know, and everyone just assumes that the economy will come back roaring and raring in America. I don't know what they feel in Australia, but I'm seeing a lot of people that they'll never quite put the house of cards together again or put their financing and everything back together again. So a lot of tragedy.
Yeah. So, you talk about the economy and the bounce back. There's a new term that they've invented over here. It's called snapback. Apparently, the economy is going to snap back as soon as we turn the tap on again. But I'm with you, Matt. I've been a business owner. I own some businesses, and I've got a small shopping centre with 12 tenants, and 5 of them are broke. They're not coming back. So this is a challenging time. It really is. Yeah.
The other thing that we have going on in America, which I know that you've seen and read about, Andrew, is when an economy, it's always this question about cultural issues that a lot of people care about and economic issues that a lot of people care about. Your group is very focused on limited government, free markets, and the economic questions, but you can see how they're intertwined. In America, when people lose their jobs and they lose hope, often they really make bad personal decisions. And part of that is great social unrest. And what we had in America, which was a disastrous example of really bad police work as well. So with this social unrest, brings all types of new problems. Have you had similar problems?
Not yet. I mean, you touched on one of the problems a moment ago in that there's been a report to government and from some of the non-profit sector that they're expecting suicides to rise substantially, between 500 and 1,500 extra suicides over the next 5 years. Now, bear in mind, the virus has cost 100 lives. So, when we have this question of the cure being worse than the disease, I mean, I really do feel we're sort of at that point in some ways. What we observe and what's going on in America at the moment is kind of heartbreaking from a distance. I can't imagine what it's like, with the rioting and the, I guess, the societal kind of dysfunction that's going on there.
That's right. It is. It's heartbreaking, and a lot of people, including religious leaders, seem to be almost giving a free pass to violence, to wanton destruction of property, to stealing and looting, and 60 harmed Secret Service agents who are tasked with protecting the president. It's really, I think you're right. It's a sad moment.
Yeah, it is, and I love the US, and we love what Australians love what the US stand for, but we see what's going on there, and we fear for you guys basically, and we hope you can sort it out. I mean, it's such a difficult, challenging conundrum, I think, but we all hope you can sort it out.
When we went down for CPAC Australia, one of the things in the beautiful downtown Sydney, one of the things that happened to us is there was an attempt by Antifa to infiltrate CPAC, and just so you know, unfortunately, they're all over America in these protests, and obviously part of the violence, and the president's named them a terrorist organization. It was eye-opening to think that they were also in Australia. You haven't seen their presence yet during this shutdown.
No, we haven't. I mean, I think Australians culturally, we're a more compliant nation. I mean, we're a pioneer nation like you guys historically, but we're brought over ships with overseers, right, with guns, and we're fairly compliant. We've got a bit of a kind of a European type attitude towards authority, a little bit different to the United States, but Antifa are here, and they protest. I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're a terrorist organization by any stretch. And our experience with them at CPAC in Australia, in Sydney, Matt, probably, you probably would have seen that they're not, but they are violent. They have been violent. One of our well-known television presenters was attacked by two Antifa representatives and assaulted a couple of years back. But they're not at that level that they appear to be in the US, and certainly they're not quarterbacking large, violent protests, which appears to be happening there. So thankfully for that, and as I said before, we just wish you guys all the best.
Yeah, well, and we wish the best for you too, Andrew. What's the status of your plans on having the second annual CPAC?
Well, we would love to have you back, Matt, you and Dan and the crew, and have some of your great American colleagues to come over. But the quarantine restrictions for US visitors is likely to be quite harsh. So we've accepted that we're not going to see you this year. Here in Sydney anyway. So we're going to host CPAC on the US election day. We're going to embrace that day as if it's our own for that one day, and we're going to make that, let's hope, one almighty party, right?
Oh man, from your mouth to God's ears. I think the election in America, one of the lessons we learned as we traveled the globe together is obviously each one of our countries has a special role to play, but America has a dominant role in economic questions about what these international globalist entities do. And the one thing I think the whole world realizes, and you tell me if it's true in Australia, a lot of people are watching this presidential election because they know if Donald Trump loses, it's not going to be a good situation.
Yeah, the impression, I mean, Donald Trump here in Australia is a controversial figure. There's no doubt about that. And I personally, you know, I have internal struggles. He says so much, right? So I know you're good mates with Donald, but he says so much, and I can't keep up. And some things I think, what's he saying that for? And then I think, oh, this is fantastic. I'm so confused sometimes.
Andrew,
right?
Just call me, and I'll help you through it. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Matt. But when we look at the alternative, you know, elections are all about, you know, there are two people up there, right? And you look at the alternative and you think, my goodness. Well, the first thing I think is, what are the Democrats doing? Is this the guy they're going to put up against the Donald? And then I think, well, you know, that's really no alternative at all. And I think on balance, you know, I look at what you know what he's done. He's defunded he's announced that he's defunding WHO, the World Health Organization. I think that's a brilliant move. I mean, that organization is so far behind the curve. It's supposed to be there to help nations, you know, get through these pandemics, and it's so far behind. Even the data they have on their website now is just lagging. You know, it's so it's not a help, it's a hindrance.
Well, I also think generally the approach to China, which is something that's important in your neighborhood too. We got to make sure that we make the right moves there.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, there'll be an inquiry and investigation into the origins of this virus. And I'm not entirely convinced that you know, that it was some sort of Chinese, you know, conspiracy, or but that's why we need an inquiry, right? And it's interesting that the Chinese are pushing back very hard on that international investigation, which Australia was kind of at the forefront. We pushed that forward, and you know, we've got some international supporters on that. So there will be an investigation, and it'll be interesting to see what transpires or comes out of that.
Well, no matter whether or not they meant to do it or not, they sure didn't take the right responsible steps to contain the virus. And the idea that they're going to allow people to really come in and investigate, I'm dubious that they'll actually be transparent. It's just not the way these commies roll.
Yeah. When you look up good international citizen in the dictionary, China doesn't appear to be there, right? They're an authoritarian, and I'd say fascist regime, and we know what they do. You know, they expand and they try to take more authority. So certainly, I think we need to be very concerned. And I think the Trump administration's has exposed that, and I think that's a good thing.
I think it's a great thing. And Andrew Cooper, we love working with you. We appreciate the work you're doing to preserve freedom and explain our philosophy of limited government and lower taxes and allowing people individual freedom to determine how they want to live their life. We want to get back over to Australia. As you know, Election Day is a pretty tough day for us. Hopefully it will be a great day. Hopefully we're going to get you on Skype and we'll share a pint together.
Well, we might get you on Skype back the other way too, hey?
That's a deal.
And get our great speaker Mark Meadows on Skype as well, and we might put the Donald on, right? You can organise that, can't you, Matt? Put the Donald on Skype.
I think if he's winning, he'll be in a good mood, so I think that'll be fine. And Mark Meadows from CPAC Australia on to even greater things as the president's chief of staff. So you really launched your careers over there.
That's what we're doing.
Cooper, for being with us. We now have a great video clip of our experience in Sydney, Australia for CPAC Australia. So listen to this, and on the other end, we'll be talking with Matt Schlapp about these terrible protests. Well, that was a great video in remembrance of our time at CPAC Australia in Sydney, and it was great to talk with Andrew Cooper, our good friend. And now we're going to get, it looks like, an on-the-street update from our friend Matt Toure, who runs Black Guns Matter. Maj, thanks for joining us again on CPAC Live. What's going on in Philadelphia?
Philadelphia. What's up? First and foremost, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Of
I hope
course,
everybody.
we always love talking to you
Absolutely. I hope everybody's hunkered down, armed, and being safe.
for
In
sure.
Philadelphia, we're having 6 o'clock curfews initiated. We're seeing several things. One, certain areas are state troopers and in conjunction with police department are locking certain areas down where a lot of the rioting has happened. And I want to be clear here. There's nothing more American than protest. However, what we're seeing is not just protest. We are seeing um, tons of like just random pallets of bricks being left in certain areas. We're seeing people come from outside of the actual city to, drop off people. Right now, I'm riding past a bus full of National Guard troops that are coming in to combat some of the people that are not from Philadelphia,
Right.
do not live in Philadelphia, are seeming to come here with an agenda to create chaos. And so, I'm maneuvering a little bit around to the areas that I can drive through. Obviously, I got a gun on me, as everyone should, but that's kind of what we're seeing here. And I just want to make it clear for people being frustrated about government overreach, which obviously this whole corona, again, to the people that have passed because of actual corona and COVID, that's a serious thing. But the overreach that has gone along with it, people are frustrated, as well as it being during a time where media has highlighted a death of an American. So people are frustrated, but I want people that are frustrated to understand that some of the people that are there are trying to exploit the situation for their political gain, and not actual protest against real injustice.
Do you think that the economic shutdown, Maj, which has caused so many people to be furloughed, laid off, fired, businesses have closed, has that kind of economic hopelessness resulted in more people doing things like maybe turning to violence or being more hateful in their actions?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture. So number one, absolutely. When you feel like maybe not it is actually the case, but when you feel like you don't have a way out, money's not coming in, you're frustrated. Something happens there that becomes very primal.
Yeah.
You have a very that aggression, especially if you're a more aggressive being and if you're not super soft. Again, it's no different than when you carry a firearm. You have to control the fact of the matter is you are a very dangerous person. Which makes you righteous is you only use that danger to defend life. Some people have not taken that type of training in regards to this is unprecedented. We are a lot of people are not aware. We're not aware that for months the government, especially in a lot of blue states and cities, would tell them, "Hey, your job and what you do for a living is unessential in essence," and they're
Yep.
now frustrated by that. So it's a lot easier to fall into that wayside. We're seeing suicides across the nation up. We're seeing domestic abuse cases up. I mean, I'm talking to law enforcement. I'm talking to ER. I'm talking to nurses, and these actual outcomes for things that we were supposed to be doing to prevent against a virus
Right.
has been more negatively impacting than
Yeah,
the
well,
virus
the
itself.
president said the cure can't be worse than the disease, right? What
Exactly.
about these outside elements that are coming in from out of Philly? We're having it here in Washington and in Northern Virginia and Alexandria. What do you think? Do you think it's overwhelmingly people from out of state? Do you think it's ginned up and organized by the big lefty donors, or do you think it's more spontaneous?
Listen, as a person that when he was on the wrong side of life, these types of things are organized. These are highly organized phenomenon down to the uniform. You know, there's absolutely no way that pallets pallets of stones and bricks in areas where there is no construction going on.
Right.
There is absolutely no way that that's random in different spots
And
across
you've
the country.
driven by and seen these pallets.
Absolutely. And I usually get no different than with the COVID thing. I reached out to people that were dealing on COVID floors, right? That epidemiologists, virologists, ER nurses. Listen, that's above my pay grade, but those people are putting they're on the front lines. I asked them about what's going on. No different than me talking to the good portions of law enforcement that I'm talking to around the country and just regular citizens. You can have on a uniform and still be a regular good citizen, and they're sending me footage and video in real time saying this was not here last week. This was not here last week. They're caged up. This video's going viral, where a lot of those guys dressed in all black
Yep.
are literally walking up to a pallet of bricks, ripping the caution tape and stuff off of it, and getting busy. This is not an accident. Now, what I do think is happening, this is where we have to be very critical, supportive, but firm with our young people across the country that may feel disenfranchised. Listen, man, this is not the way. Those people that are putting that battery in your back to go destroy the community, some that you don't live in, some that you do live in, they have no attachment to the community that you live in, and they're going to hijack your movement and snatch its purpose away. And I'm not just talking about George Floyd. I'm not just talking about Ahmaud Arbery. I'm not just talking about Duncan Lemp. I'm talking about government overreach, and you're frustrated. The way to do that is to politically align, organize, find out what the American Conservative Union is about. Follow principles and concepts of political ideology that are in alignment with your power, not with, a wanton destruction that overshadows the reason for your frustration. But it's absolutely organized. I just know, just as organized as they am, I want us all to be armed, because if anyone attacks you physically, you are well within your rights to defend your life.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's good to, as you know, to think about these questions well ahead of these types of societal emergencies, to learn gun safety, to figure out, follow the gun laws, and to be a responsible gun owner. The one thing you don't want to do is, in a panicky situation with no experience, take irresponsible steps. And I worry about that at these times, especially, in particular for you. I watched that video of Mr. Floyd. What was your immediate reaction, Maj?
This is a murder, and I know that we have to be very careful on how we charge murder based on languaging and legalese. So I went to the people that are saying, "Oh, he only got a murder 3." Listen, if you think that George Zimmerman was guilty, right? George Zimmerman was overcharged. So the first thing in my mind is, this guy, there's no law enforcement officers that I know personally, and I've asked a ton of them. They're like, nah, just outside of our standard for our particular precinct, that's not a lawful situation.
That's right.
And regardless if it was an accident, if you kill someone, just like a gun owner, if I leave my firearm around and someone gets it and kills someone or kills themselves, right, I am responsible for that. With that being the case, my first reaction was, I have to turn this off and not watch it too many times, because I'm not with Americans being killed. I'll have an emotional reaction to Americans being murdered. I will. With that being the case, I like the fact that he's charged with the manslaughter, as well as the more and more information is coming out, manslaughter as well as murder 3, because it's very difficult to prove intent. When you're talking about a murder 1 charge, you're talking about proving intent, as well as showing how it was premeditated, and that's very difficult to prove. And we could have a killer walk, a killer that should not be on the force, and not just because of this. That's just the culmination. But the reality is, this particular thug in a uniform has had many infractions involving Americans. So these are the things that I thought.
Yeah, there's bad policing evidenced all the time, unfortunately, even though the vast majority, the overwhelming 99% of law enforcement officers act responsibly. The other thing is, Maj, the question I'd like to ask you is, the national media reports on this as if it's white cops in urban cores acting irresponsibly. My guess is, in Philadelphia, you got the rainbow in the police, right? You got lots of blacks in the police force. I mean, they don't have an animus towards other blacks, so it's got to be more complicated than the themes they push.
It's more simple than the themes they push. White males, and don't get me wrong, media makes it look as if it's only white males killing black men, unarmed black men, or unarmed black people. Statistically, now there's a stat, and there's the data, and there's media manipulation, right? White males are brutalized and killed by corrupt portions of law enforcement than anyone else in America. Anyone else, period. And it's not like the suffering Olympics where, like, hey, you guys get the gold medal for getting beat up, and we take the silver or bronze. But the reality is, the simple reality is, this is a conversation of tyranny and government overreach and what it does, absolute power, corrupting, absolutely, and freedom. If you are white, black, Asian, red, yellow, green, I don't care if you somehow got to America from the planet Mars and you are now an American citizen, I do not care. The question is this about freedom or is this about tyranny? When we have an over militarized, non conservative, over government overreach, which is not in alignment with conservative values, this is what you see. Then you have a media who has a narrative and an agenda to make money from selling not just pain in general, but more specifically black pain, and making it seem as if, okay, this is only going to happen from white guys to black guys. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. Crime is proximity. If I'm in a white neighborhood and it happens to be a black cop and he doesn't think I should be there and he jumps the gun, I may be in a situation. If I'm in a black neighborhood and I run into a white cop and he thinks, oh, I shouldn't be here, then I'll have that scenario. The problem is we have allowed government and law enforcement, they enforce the laws.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. That bad policing and aggressive authoritarian over aggressive behavior by cops is part of the problem we have in society when people who are empowered by government overreach what are these clear demarcations, limitations on what's appropriate.
Exactly. And I want to push back against a lot of our red brothers and sisters right now. Don't think because, we may live in a middle to upper middle to higher class neighborhood. Power starts at one social group, class, political group, and the power doesn't just stop there. It will continue to attempt to erode all of our rights, all of our constitutional rights, all of our human rights. So I want to be clear there. We need each other to push back, even if you're red. And there may be some areas that obviously we disagree with our brothers and sisters on the left with, right? Our blue brothers and sisters, not law enforcement, but politically. But we have to make sure that we're not allowing that unseen hand to keep us separate while it's grabbing power from both sides of the aisle. That is our job as conservatives. And I want to remind everybody that I'm just like the big brother that does this. It's not a little mad if you're mad at me. I don't care. I'm saying this because I love us. And I know this answer. This answer is not my answer. This is the answer that the founding fathers had when they made the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. We just got to go back a little bit to remind ourselves and remember to remember.
Maj, as the nation is trying to figure out, so we're so divided, right? And some of us, anyway, are trying to figure out how do we come together on some core beliefs and some values. What's your message? What's your broader message? Not just to CPAC, but your broader message to the country. Do we have hope where we can bring it back together again?
Absolutely. This is a thing that I'll call a beautiful ugly right now. It's ugly right now.
Ugly.
Because we can't see exactly where it's coming from. We've let government convince us that everybody has to wear masks. Now you can't even tell who's who. You don't know who's the bad guy and who's not, right? I wear all black all of the time. If I have on all black and a mask, I potentially look like one of the bad guys per se. I want to caution everyone, and the message again, and I hate to sound so repetitive, but the answer is a very simple answer of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It's the supreme founding documents of this place that we call America. Now, do we as Americans have our contradictions historically? Yes, absolutely. However, the unifying question that we have to ask ourselves, even the people from the Antifas in this, they feel like they've been left out. They feel, and some of it's fact, they haven't been taught civics in school. They've never read the Constitution. They have no idea. They think, Sam Adams is only a beer, So
that's right.
The understanding of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and that Bill of Rights, human rights, rights that we have as our birthright, not granted from or taken away by the government. That is the balancing point. So we can still have our differences politically, but we still have that understanding and respect for life, liberty, and the pursuit of property, because that was what it was in there originally. If you have that respect for life, you have a respect for someone else's liberty, you have a respect for someone else's property, we don't have this cities on fire going on right now. So I challenge and champion and empathetic for everyone to kind of go back into their Constitution and their Bill of Rights.
You've had the American founding lesson from Dan Schneider, like I have too, because I've heard those words before, and they're wonderful words. And I think what we're itching to do at CPAC is to get back on the road, get out of our houses, get back to life as normal, talk to people about these important values. Are you ready to join us, Maj?
Absolutely. I'm trying to get back outside. I hope y'all going somewhere warm first.
Okay,
Like,
we will.
I'm there with bells on.
Well, we're going to Reno, Nevada, and I think we're going to Wisconsin, which isn't that warm, but in the summer it'll be okay. Shortly thereafter, we're going to come out with our schedule, and I don't know, we might get some tickets ourselves or get arrested because they might say you need to be holed up in your basement, but we just can't do it much longer. And America actually can't do it much longer. We need to open up the churches. We need to open up the schools. We need to go back to work. And if we're somebody that has health issues, we all need to be respectful of those people and make sure that they get through this as well. And Maj, it's our great honor to host you again on CPAC Live. You stay safe up there in the streets of Philadelphia. You're a freedom fighter. You're a voice of reason. We love you, man.
Thank you. I love y'all too, man. Be safe. Everybody be armed. Quick plug, GoFundMe.com/Black Guns Matter. Support the work.
That's a deal, and everyone should do that. What another great episode of CPAC Live. As you know, you can join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The best way to get on and watch the show is on our website at conservative.org, but you can watch it at any time of your leisure on Twitter, on Facebook, and I'm sure other platforms soon to come. And look, I think these are troubling times for the country. I was able to go to the protest the other day in Washington, D.C. in an incognito fashion and actually watch people defacing these great statues and monuments and federal buildings. And it was really repulsive. We can all be sad about the death of the murder, as Maj has just said, of this man, but we still have to get a hold of ourselves and deal with our problems in a way that avoids violence and just outright destruction of property. And in our capital city, we got to have law and order for sure, and in all these great cities. So this is Matt Schlapp with CPAC. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.